Welcome back to the deep dive. We are continuing our ambitious journey into the ancient port city of Adulis, which was thriving during Africa's classical age. And just a quick reminder, if you're just jumping in now, this is part 3 of a 7-part deep dive. I'd really recommend you go back and listen to parts 1 and 2. We laid out all the crucial geographic and historical background that really sets the stage for the big economic mystery we're tackling today.
Exactly. Today, our mission is to move past just theories and get into some hard data. We're literally going to be digging into the stones and mortar of Adulis.
Right.
We want to know what the physical architecture itself can tell us about its economic and political structure.
So the central question then is, was Adulis just an outpost, a periphery governed by the mighty inland Aksumite kingdom?
Or was it a robust, powerful center in its own right, with its own complex, independent class structure?
And to answer that, we've got a fantastic source.
We do. We're relying on a remarkable piece of quantitative work. The full source is a dissertation called Modeling the Local Political Economy of Adulis, 1000 BCE, 700 AE. It was presented by Dr. Daniel T. Heptemichael to the University of Massachusetts Amherst back in 2019. It's a really thorough anthropological study that gives us measurable facts, not just historical speculation.
Okay, that's a perfect foundation. So let's frame the question in those terms. If Adulis was just a simple Aksumite periphery, what would its buildings look like? What would the data show?
Well, if it were a simple periphery, the data would have to show a really stark wealth differential, a very polarized social structure.
Meaning?
Imagine you graphed it. You'd see a tiny group of powerful elites at the very top building these massive structures to show their connection to Aksum, the center of power.
Okay.
And then you'd see a huge base of poor local producers at the bottom. The graph would have 2 separate peaks or maybe a really sharp drop-off.
Yeah.
You'd be missing all the middle rungs of the ladder.
So a bimodal distribution, elites and then everyone else, nothing in between.
Exactly.
And what if the data shows the opposite? What if Adulis was its own economic center?
In that case, we should see continuous wealth accumulation across the whole population. It would reflect a dynamic local economy that could support all sorts of different jobs.
So you wouldn't just see rich and poor.
No, you'd expect to find a visible, thriving middle class and upper middle class, various tiers. The architecture would show a gradual, continuous line of wealth, not a sharp drop.
Okay, so the size and complexity of a building acts as a proxy for social class. Let's get into the methodology here. Energetics. How do you turn a stone wall into a social power index?
Energetics is the method you use to translate a physical building into what we call labor-time material intensities.
Right.
You quantify the total investment, not just the stone, but the specialized labor to gather it, shape it, and put it all together. It lets us assign a hard value based on time and resources, instead of just guessing if a house was rich or poor.
And Adulis had very specific materials and building techniques that tie directly to its location, starting with the stone.
Absolutely. The materials were all sourced locally. They used this black vesicular basalt. It has a sort of frothy volcanic look to it. And that was available within just 4 kilometers.
Okay, so pretty close by.
Very close. And for slightly higher status buildings, they'd bring in mica schist, which is a tougher rock. But that meant hauling it about 10 kilometers.
But the real architectural signature, the thing that makes Adulis so unique, is this technique they used, graduated masonry, which I understand made calculating the volume a real headache for the researchers.
Oh, it's stunningly distinctive. Graduated masonry involves courses or layers of stone about 1/2 meter high.
Okay.
But the clever part, the labor-intensive part, is that as each course is stacked, the external face is offset by about 5 centimeters, roughly the width of your palm.
Ah, so it steps inwards as it goes up.
Exactly. It creates this beautiful stepped exterior, almost like a little pyramid, while the inside wall stays perfectly smooth and vertical.
And I'm guessing the quality of this work tells you a lot about the owner's status right away.
Immediately. They classified it into 3 grades. Grade A walls use the greatest variety of materials, finished stone, special mortar. It required highly skilled labor. That was for the elites or major public buildings.
And the other 2?
Grade B was the middle ground, more consistent materials, maybe less refined. And grade C was basically just rubble with very little finishing, low labor, low status.
So measuring these stepped walls must be really tricky. You can't just do length times width times height.
Not at all. To get a truly accurate measure, the researchers had to use some pretty complex computer-aided design software.
Like what?
They used Rhino 3D with a special add-on called Grasshopper to digitally model each structure course by course. They had to calculate the volume for each 1/2 meter layer, accounting for that 5 centimeter recession every single time.
That's an incredible level of detail.
It is, but it's what makes the data so robust.
Okay, so let's shift from the materials and the math to the people, the labor organization. You're saying building a house wasn't just a family affair?
No, it was fundamentally a collective, community undertaking. And this idea has deep roots. We see it mentioned in historical sources like the Periplus and the Christian topography. Construction was woven into the social fabric.
And it was all managed by a local body called the Beto.
The Beto, yes. This was a local ceremonial council, kind of like a town hall meeting. It was a democratically elected group of 3 to 7 respected community members.
And they did what, exactly?
They resolved conflicts, allocated resources, and, this is the crucial part, they granted building permission. It represents this layer of decentralized social control that was probably unique to Adulis as a port.
And they were planners. I mean, they were thinking generations ahead.
Unbelievably so. When the Beto approved a building request for, say, a newly married couple, they would estimate the future size of that family. They might say, okay, a 1-story building for person A for 6 souls.
Wow.
It's fascinating for archaeologists because it explains why you might find a huge house that seems to have only been occupied by 2 or 3 people. It was built for the future.
So how did someone get access to this community labor pool? It wasn't automatic, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was often triggered by a life event like marriage. But first, the young person had to prove their worth to their own kin group.
And how would they do that?
By contributing labor to their family's compound for years, mastering a trade, something that showed they were ready to be a full member of the community. Only then would the family feel it was appropriate to ask the Beto for help.
And this system actually gives us a way to trace the social hierarchy. Explain how the labor obligations change as you go down the social ladder.
It creates a very clean social marker. Basically everyone, even the lower classes, had an obligation to contribute labor to the top tier, the king, the court, the major temples.
Okay, that's a universal tax, in a way.
A tax in time and muscle, yes. But here's the key difference. The mid-tier classes had no duty to contribute labor to the commoners in the lower tier.
Ah, so the obligation only flows up.
It flows up. So if you didn't have the status, you couldn't call on the community to build your home. You had to rely on your immediate family or pay for it yourself. That's a traceable line.
Okay, now we get to the data. After all those complex calculations on 39 different buildings, what did the raw numbers show?
They showed extreme variation, which is already a good sign of complexity. There were about 13 small structures, under 125 cubic meters, and then you had 5 massive public outliers that were over 1,000 cubic meters.
And was this pattern consistent?
It was. And this is what gives us confidence. Whether the researchers looked at the 39 structures individually, the splitter approach, or grouped them into related compounds, the lumping approach, the pattern was, and I'm quoting here, strikingly similar.
So what did that distribution look like? Did it have that sharp drop-off we'd expect from a simple periphery?
It did not. The compiled data showed a gradual and continuous line from low to high.
So there it is.
That's the moment. The null hypothesis that Adulis is just a simple outpost with only elites and poor producers is rejected. The continuous line confirms the presence of a middle class, an upper middle class, and so on.
A functioning, multi-tiered society.
Absolutely. It suggests a strong internal economy and decentralized power. You need stability and opportunity for a middle class of merchants, artisans, and skilled laborers to thrive like that.
Right, that makes perfect sense. So, to finalize this, they had to translate that volume data into the ultimate measure, energetics or person days of labor.
Correct. Using experimental archaeology, they came up with conversion rates. A high-status grade A wall, for example, took about 3.5 person days per cubic meter to build.
And the lower grades?
Grade B was cheaper, about 2 person days, and grade C was just 1 person day. The most intensive things were the carved columns, which took 4 full days per cubic meter.
So applying those numbers must have created a crystal clear social map. What did the final energetics data show?
It confirmed a very clear 4-tier hierarchy.
Let's break that down. What was in Tier 1?
Tier 1 was the big public stuff. The courthouse and 3 massive temples. These required a staggering amount of labor, from around 3,800 up to nearly 8,500 person days.
That's a huge number.
It is, and it's a 4.7-fold jump in labor from the tier right below it. That massive gap confirms that this was the universal mandatory civic duty we were talking about. This was labor the state could command.
And Tier 2, where did the elites land?
Tier 2 was the elite residences and maybe some major trading structures. These needed about 1,000 to 1,600 person days. These are your powerful merchants, the people controlling the port.
Okay, and then you get into the tiers that really define Adulis as a center.
Exactly. Tier 3 was the upper middle class, requiring somewhere between 700 to 1,000 person days. They could afford good materials and skilled labor, but not on the scale of the elites.
And finally, the broader middle class.
That's Tier 4, ranging from about 250 to 650 person days, with the simplest lower-class structures falling below 200.
So the final synthesis is undeniable. The architecture, the math, the labor, it all rejects the simple periphery model.
It does. The energetics analysis confirmed a multi-tiered social organization. Adulis had its own distinct architectural and social identity. It was a sophisticated hub, not just a simple port of call for Aksum.
It's just a profound look at how you can read power and wealth directly from the stones of a city.
Yeah, we've done this just by looking at the built forms,
Yeah.
but the story's far from over. We need to see if other evidence backs this up.
Right. And that's where we're going next time in part 4. We're shifting from architecture to artifacts.
Yes. We'll be examining things found inside these buildings: gold chains, goldsmithing tools, even entire elephant tusks.
And these artifacts give us a second, totally independent line of evidence to evaluate Adulis's complex relationship with Aksum and the wider world. So before we wrap up, here's a final thought for you to chew on. Considering that enormous community obligation that built those massive Tier 1 structures, the temples and the courthouse, what might the discovery of the actual completion time for just one of those big temples tell us about the real population size of Adulis? We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.